What is next for the Phoenix, Arizona real estate market, guys? Thank you for joining. We are going to discuss that as a roller coaster ride of a housing market and an economy, most likely here, continue to take place here in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as the rest of the country, guys. So thank you for joining our our YouTube live here. Really appreciate you guys. If you don't mind, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Get us out there, but also to comment. Let us know where you're watching from. We have people from all over the country, and would love to see where you're watching from. And go ahead and comment. Let's make this a two-way interaction, if at all possible. We're going to discuss what's really next, what's on the horizon for the Phoenix housing market, and kind of pull out our crystal ball here a little bit if we have one, which we don't, but we're going to pretend like we do, right? And see what we can come up with here with looking at some of the data, but also too with what is happening in the Phoenix area. There's some interesting developments happening, right? Which was always like to talk about and focus on. But what's going on with the Fed? The Fed, they raised rates. What happened yesterday when they met, and what's going to happen, or what's likely to happen later on this year? So I'm glad you're joining us here today, guys. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to jump into it here in just a second. So here we go. All right. If you were not paying attention, I'm glad you logged into this video because here we go. Federal Reserve raises interest rates again despite banking failure. So everyone kind of assumed this was going to happen, and it did. The Fed obviously moved forward with raising the rates as anticipated, 25 basis points. Now, why is that? Well, this article is going to talk a little bit about it, and we're going to discuss that too. But one of the main reasons is I think the Federal Reserve doesn't want to be the word bullied comes to mind, right? That's kind of a bad word. They don't mean bullied. They don't need their hand to be forced to derail the plan they have for the economy unless it actually is working. Now, is a bank failure or several actually that, it's hard to say, but right now it's looking like not necessarily because this is not the mom and pop bank that failed, right? These are, banks that support startups and private equity, venture capital, things of that nature. So, anyways, let's look at this article because it's interesting, right? Why it matters and what they're saying. I think this is a very good article. I read through a bunch of them, trying to provide you the best one I feel that explains what's going on. So here we go. The Fed raised 25 basis points the federal funds rate. Okay, they're continuing this campaign to bring down inflation through monetary tightening. Right, as the financial system has some cracks, is better than other tools, okay, like emergency lending and deposit guarantees, blah, blah, blah. But they're trying to counter inflation. That's the bottom line, guys, okay? What they're saying, Jerome Powell, what he says matters more than probably most people on the planet right now when it comes to the economy. The events in the banking system over the past 2 weeks are likely to result in tighter credit conditions for households and businesses, which will in turn affect economic outcomes, okay? He said it's possible that significant tightening in credit conditions might mean that monetary policy may have less work to do. Interesting. All right. Now, here's where they currently stand. The committee, they raised the federal funds target rate to 5%, up from 4.5%, which is the highest since 2007. That's interesting, right, guys? And so right now, they also said in here, which I thought was interesting, that it's a contrast to what the previous language said, that ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate. That's interesting. So I love this part. Here's the silver, not silver, but the crystal ball. Silver ball would be kind of weird, right? We don't make predictions with silver balls. Come on. All right, crystal ball. Here we go. The Fed officials' expectations for how the economy will perform and how high rates will rise over the remainder of the year were little changed. The median official expected target rates to rise to 5.1%. Okay, we're at 5 right now. That's not much more. The same as previous projections set at the end of last year. Here's the one I want you guys to pay attention to. This is interesting. Notably, none of the officials forecast rate cuts between now and year end, contrary to moves priced into financial markets that have become more gloomy about the outlook over the last 2 weeks. So a lot of people are looking forward to rate cuts. None of the officials came out and said we anticipate that rates are going to obviously be cut and it's going to be 50 basis point slash coming here in a month or two or whatever, right? Could it happen? Could. You never know, but not likely at this point. So that being said, What do you do with that information? Well, number one, I can tell you this: some stability for these rates would be nice. If it stops at 5% on the federal funds rate, but it stays there for a while, that would be a welcome to the economy, to the housing market. Yes, are mortgage rates potentially going to be a little higher because of it? Potentially, yes. But the stability of it, where the consumer can now wrap their minds around the fact that this is where it's going to be for a while. So now, do I want to act or not? Is it a monthly payment I can afford or not? Sellers out there, do I need to provide concessions and credits to get the buyers the appropriate interest rate buy down they need to afford my house? These types of things would be very helpful instead of the yo-yo that the Fed keeps creating. Well, I shouldn't say too much of a yo-yo. It's pretty much going up, but with that, mortgage rates are kind of yo-yoing all over the place because they're not directly tied to that federal funds rate. Speaking of which, let's check them out real quick. Where do they stand? Well, here we go. They're down just by a smidge, right? I mean, just the smallest of margins. They are down today, 6.44% on the 30-year fix. Now, at a 15-year, if you can afford that little bit higher payment and you want to pay down your debt faster, which is very un-American, by the way. Just kidding. I mean, it kind of is, right? I mean, sad but true. Then you're at 5.93%, right? The ARM, look at the 5-1 ARM, 6.55. It's actually higher, okay? Higher than the 30-year fixed. Why is that? Now, guys, this is interesting, right? Let's chat about this for a second. Why is the 5-1 ARM higher than the 30-year fixed? Okay, now remember we talked about the May the May CPI report that's scheduled to come out in May. That's important. Why? Because inflation really started to rise May of 2022. It was low in January through April of 2022. So if you have a higher inflation number May 2022, and now the year over year report in May 2023 shows inflation maybe coming down a little bit or getting closer to or even below, which it probably wasn't, where it was in 2022 in May, that is a sign that the economy will really respond to, the markets will respond to favorably. And so that's what's kind of built into the market already. And it's only March, right? So I think the smart money, quote unquote, smart money is telling us here that they don't want to give out 5-1 ARMs. Why? Because they think the rates are going to come down at some point in the near future. I'm not saying it's going to be May. I'm not saying it's going to be May of 2023 in 2 months and everything's going to be rosy. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But the signals are certainly that they are pricing the 5-1 ARM higher because they think you're just going to refinance out of it here shortly, and therefore why even bother giving you that loan to begin with? We'd rather just price that high above a 30-year fixed, so you go ahead and get that 30-year fixed product, and then and we're good, and hopefully you won't refinance out of it potentially, assuming rates come down, 25 basis points, maybe 50 basis points at some point over the next several months. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a tall tale sign. That's interesting to me, at least, right? So here we go. Share my screen back to Mortgage News Daily, which is a great site, by the way. And you can see some of their headlines up here about bonds improving. Mortgage rates inch down to lowest levels since early February. That's not bad, right? Now it's a waiting game. The Fed cleared a lot up for the market yesterday by confirming that inflation still matters, but that systematic banking problems also matter, obviously, to an extent. They're watching that closely. Interesting. Okay. Now, if we go back to the market, where are we at right now? With the Cromford Market Index, guys, and you guys know the situation with CMI, but I'm going to put it on here anyways, just in case you are a first-time listener. But that's the CMI, Cromford Market Index, and there's the range right there, okay? 90 to 100 is balanced, below 90, buyer's market, above 110, seller's market. Where do we stand right now overall in the Phoenix area? There you go. We're about 134. That's obviously a seller's market. And we talked about this at nauseam, but I'll mention it again, guys, because supply is so low. That is kind of the issue right now. Demand is low too, but supply is lower, and therefore that's keeping prices at bay. And guys, the question you'd be asking yourself is, okay, is that going to change anytime soon? Do we have a glutton of homes that are going to be released onto the market, this shadow inventory that everyone talked about in 2010, 11, 12, and 13 that never arrived? And back then, there's actually some data that proved that maybe it could. Right now, there's not. Why? Because foreclosures are so incredibly low, it's not even funny. The pre-foreclosure data has increased, but it's still very low. Why? Because people have equity. So most people, if they're behind because they're falling on hard times for some reason with their job or whatever it may be, they still have equity, so they can sell and make money without having to foreclose, even though they're behind on their monthly payment to the bank. Okay, so CMI, here we go, looking pretty good. Okay, in the last 3 days, we've only seen a rise of 0.2, which is a slowdown. Okay, so it's not, but again, remember the seasonal activity, guys. This is pretty common for the seasonal activity for the Phoenix market. You will, if everything goes as quote unquote a normal market, you will see over the next month or two the CMI start to level off. It just will, because that the market levels off. So typically that's what will happen. But obviously different factors can change that. All right. So that's interesting to me. Now, if you go on here, here's where we stand with the gauges across the Phoenix metro area in terms of increases. So Chandler, we hit this a little bit on one of the other videos, but Chandler's up big time, and you can see nothing's changed in terms of what the CMI has reported since then. So you can see that everything's looking pretty good across the board. Everything is up across the board with the market. All right. So I talked about this in one of our other videos, but I'm going to say it again. This is interesting. Where is it at? Demand is stable and no longer growing very fast, but supply is low and is falling at a even faster rate. Okay, right here. This is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, talks about the price per square foot and that it's up. Okay, this means the average price per square foot for closed listings has jumped up by 3.4% in just 2 months, which is good for the overall market. All right, and then here we go. Who is still holding out for a housing market crash? In other words, they're asking that question because there's no data out there right now that would suggest that in Phoenix that's going to happen anytime soon. Now, obviously, we never know what can happen in the future, but right now that's the deal. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to everybody. And of course, we have our gauges here. We can go through right now. Look at Phoenix; it's increasing. It's at a 170. You guys can see by this right here. Phoenix just about a week ago was at, where you at, Phoenix? Oh, I apologize. Oh, there it is. 170. So where are we at now? 170. All right. We're still in the same bucket, all right? Same spot. All right. But you can see, guys, here's what's interesting. And we'll just stick with Phoenix, the Phoenix alone here, because we won't beat this to death. But look at demand. It's low. It's in red. It's below 100. It's low. Supply is the opposite on this gauge, right? If it's low, it's in the green, because if it was in the red, we would be in a little bit different situation. If it was in the red here and the red here, we'd be in the red overall, and it would be a not as good housing market. All right. This is interesting, I thought. Here we go. JPMorgan Chase is trying to get back into the mortgage business in a big way. They launch a mortgage initiative amid national lending slump. They're trying to jump in and take some business. So let's just touch on this really quick here, okay? They are giving this advice pilot. It's actually a pilot they're launching in a few different places across the country, encouraging Chase customers to give Chase a second look on a mortgage loan. And it has 1.8 million customers in Arizona and 78 million nationwide. If we can't match or beat the price, we'll give them $200. All right. So you're buying a house or refinancing, and you're out there shopping, right? Or maybe you have a favorite mortgage lender and you get a certain quote. If you bank with Chase, Chase is telling you, hey, give us a second look, give us a chance, right? And if we can't beat it, we'll give you $200 just for giving us a chance. Okay, that's interesting. But what you have to be careful on these big banks, guys. I want to say this very, very carefully, but make sure you guys totally understand where I'm coming from on this. Is that there's a lot more that goes in to a good experience when buying a house, getting a loan somewhere or another, than just the rate. The big banks, unfortunately, have been known to make, like, for example, the closing date just a suggestion. It's not a suggestion. It's on the contract. You have to close by this date. But because they have a lot of customers, as you can see, they have 1.8 million in Arizona alone, just this one bank. If they don't hit the closing date because they have other priorities and ahead of you, do they really care? Right? Do they really care? They just will tell you, oh, get an extension. Well, sometimes it's not that easy because the seller wants to make sure you close on that date. It's a contract. So just be careful on that when it comes to lending with a big bank like that, because they've been known to have some issues when it comes to that. Not always the best customer service on the mortgage side. All right, here we go. Some other noteworthy things I thought was interesting. All right, Homebuilder, Toll Brothers, buys the last lots at a luxury community in North Scottsdale for $24.7 million. Guys, this is a beautiful plot of land right here. This is Story Rock. This is one of the last frontiers of privately held land currently in Scottsdale. It sits back behind the McDowell Mountains and right next to beautiful views of Tom's Thumb. So, guys, there's actually a mountain, McDowell Mountains. In the McDowell Mountains, there's a rock that looks like this, a thumbs up, and it's called Tom's Thumb. It's pretty cool, actually. And you have a lot of good views in this little subdivision back here called Story Rock. They're building it out currently. There are 3 different builders, I believe, back here. There's Rosewood, there's Taylor Morrison, actually there's 4, David Weekley and Toll Brothers. So now this is interesting because there's not very much left when it comes to privately held land. You get an idea of what one of their homes will look like or looks like. And they offer 2 collections at Story Rock. Okay. So you can see right here, they will feature 4 floor plans ranging from 4,100 square feet up to about 5,300. And the manor will have 5 different floor plans that are a little bit smaller. Okay. Overall. But anyways, pretty cool because if you have a chance to come down to Arizona or Scottsdale and you're even remotely interested in buying new construction with views that are very, very, very private area tucked back behind the mountains, Story Rock is the place for you. Give us a call. We would love to help you walk through that. We know several of the agents out there that work for the builders, and they are happy to accommodate us and our clients. So that is interesting. All right. A few other things here I'm going to go through that I thought was pretty interesting. All right. There is a current Proposition 400 on the ballot right now, or I should say within legislature, that they're trying to get passed in the legislature to give a half-cent sales tax to help with the roads and some other things too, right? So anyways, some public transportation, they talk about this, light rails, roadways, etc. So that's on the ballot. We'll see if it passes. That's interesting, right? But here's the thing, guys. In Arizona, we have a really good road system for the most part for a city this large. And because we don't have snow, we have some amazing smooth roads, concrete, rubberized asphalt, very quiet when you drive on. So we're pretty spoiled in Arizona when it comes to the roadways. So I don't really have an opinion on this either way. But if it means having the type of roads that we have and continuing that maintenance on them, then I guess it wouldn't be that bad. I don't know. I get leery sometimes of taxes though, that when they increase them, because are they really going to go, the tax money really going to go to where it should go to? You just kind of wonder, right? Sometimes about that stuff. All right. This is interesting. Okay. This has to do with what we're talking about with the economy right now. Okay. What's next? Well, here we go. A stunningly high commercial mortgage debt may determine the economy banking sector's future. All right. This is interesting. Stay tuned and dial in with me for a second, for just a couple minutes on this one, because this is interesting. All right. Here we go. The last great recession was really because of residential real estate loans. Now, this one they're saying, could commercial have a situation playing a hand with, maybe having a little hiccup, at least in the economy? Well, here we go. Right now, they estimate that about $2.3 trillion in commercial real estate debt is held by smaller banks, more than 70% of the total commercial real estate debt. That's interesting. The company's guidance released earlier this month shows that more than $270 billion of commercial mortgages held by financial institutions will expire at the end of this year, meaning borrowers either need to pay off the loans or refinance their package. Bloomberg intelligence analysts estimate the number may be even higher with multifamily mortgage debt. All right. Now, as you come down here, it's interesting. The bigger concern, here we go. Most of this $270 billion debt is held in banks that are smaller than $250 billion in assets, according to TREP. So if borrowers find themselves struggling to service the debt, banks are left with 2 choices: work with the borrower to ease the terms or call the loan entirely, which would probably not be a good idea because they probably don't have the money. With interest rates as high as they are, refinancing a loan is going to cost far more than it would just a couple years ago. All right. So what we're saying here, guys, is interesting. You have this looming $2.3 trillion of commercial real estate debt that is set to expire. Okay. But $270 billion of it, expire this year. So what happens if $270 billion of commercial mortgages expire and the people who have them cannot make the payment? Now, hopefully most will. Rents across the country are, I think, overall have fallen a little bit. Like in Phoenix, it fell a little bit, but now they stabilized and they're still in really good shape in Phoenix compared to where they were just 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't see that going anywhere because we have a little bit of a housing shortage here, right? But what happens if that happens, right? If this 270 billion comes due at the end of this year, the bank has those two choices. I think a lot of banks will end up working with these people now, unless they're in really bad straits, which could happen, right? But this is the looming commercial real estate. Like again, the thing that they said that I thought was so interesting is that 270 billion dollars that debt is held in banks that are smaller than 250 billion in assets. That math doesn't look too good as long if the landlords or the borrowers, excuse me, of the debt cannot pay. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. Abby, what's going on? Are commercial real estate loan rates different than residential mortgage rates? If they're different, how so? All right, good question. So with commercial loans, it's a whole different type of underwriting, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a specialist in all of this stuff, but I do know enough to be dangerous. I actually have a commercial loan myself on a building, and you underwrite them completely different. The value of the commercial asset is based on the value of, from primarily speaking, the lease. Okay, not necessarily what the building next door is just sold for. And so, as long as businesses can pay their lease, their rent, then everything's hunky dory for the building owner who has the debt. So there you go. In a nutshell, that's how it is. Loan rates, like you said here, are a little bit different. Typically, they could, in terms of the rate, it's going to be in the ballpark of residential rates, but there's so many different types of residential mortgages, right? The 30-year, the 15-year, the ARMs, all this stuff, FHA, HUD, all this stuff, right? With commercial real estate, you have obviously portfolio loans with investors that hold them, but you also have the SBA loan, Small Business Administration, which is the kind of government's version of the HUD for residential real estate. Okay, the HUD-backed loans like FHA and VA. All right, so that being said, a lot of the down payments for commercial assets on financing are a lot higher. So, like in residential, you have a lot of programs that will allow for maybe a 3% down payment, 5% down payment, 10%, et cetera. In commercial, most of the loans will require to at least a 20% down payment, but a lot of them require 25 to 30% on that down payment. And then even more in certain cases, right? Depending on how big that loan is. So it just depends from that standpoint, but great question. Thanks for asking. Michael, what's up? What's going on? Thanks for tuning in, Michael. Really appreciate you doing that. Okay, guys. So that's interesting, right? What will happen? Time will tell. All right, let's look at the next one here. All right, this is an interesting thing because we did a video where we talked about ElectraMeccanica. They halt production of their three-wheeled electric vehicles. How dare they? How dare they do that? I really wanted a three-wheel car. I'm just kidding, guys. I did not want a three-wheel car, and I think most Americans said they don't want to either because they're not buying them. So guess what they're doing? As any smart business would do, they have no demand. They're going to switch, and they're going to stop the manufacturing of the three-wheel car. And instead, guess what they're going to do? Take a wild guess. They're going to manufacture four-wheeled cars. What a concept. So they're going to call it something fancy called Project 4. That's kind of cool. The not so cool thing about is that they said they're going to manufacture them the manufacturer will be onshore, although it didn't specify whether it would be built at its Valley Assembly or Technology Facility. Okay, so there you go. ElectraMeccanica is pivoting to four-wheel cars instead of three-wheel cars, and that's just what is going on there. All right, so guys, today that's our show because I'll be honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot in the news. Everything was kind of ho-hum because where we're standing right now with the economy, everyone's kind of wait and see on everything. I can tell you right now that my prediction is that we are not going to have a housing crash anytime soon in Phoenix. Maybe in other places of the country it could happen because the economy is just different. If you were looking to see, everyone has to live somewhere if you're in Phoenix, right? Now maybe you could choose to live on the streets if you want to, but you have to live somewhere. And if it's between renting or buying, that is a complicated question that could go many different ways. We would love to chat with you about your specific situation, but overall, I, of course, is no surprise. I'm a big fan of home ownership, and I think it does wonders. Did you know? I'll leave you with this stat. Okay. Last year, the average net worth, I know you probably heard me say this, I'm gonna say it again. The average net worth of a person who owned their home, just one home, okay, in America was $255,000. Conversely, the average net worth of somebody who did not own their home and they're renters, right, was $6,500. That is a big, big number, especially in an inflationary environment. Because what happens to real estate values when inflation hits? They go up. So your net worth will go up. And then what you can do when you have control over that asset, i.e., your home or a rental house, whatever it is, i.e., take a home equity line of credit out of it. And use that money to accelerate and buy something else that appreciates in value, and then it compounds and accelerates, right? So there's a whole YouTube live I could do on just real estate investing because I'm very passionate about it. But I do think homeownership, generally speaking, is a really, really good thing as long as you can afford the monthly, right? Don't get yourself caught and get a loan that if it's $3,000 a month, you're gonna have a hard time paying it. And don't do that, right? Don't do that. Then buy a cheaper house and start somewhere. You can house hack. That's a big thing, right? Where you come in and you rent out part of the house to someone else through Airbnb or whatever, or it's a duplex and you live in one half of the house, someone else lives in the other half. There's all kinds of options you can do to get started. Yes, it may be inconvenient for a short period of time, but it's a little bit of sacrifice for long-term gain, right? Abby, good question. Here we go. You could zip around in that thing so fast, ElectraMeccanica. I know, but I'd rather zip around in a four-wheel Tesla if I had to, right? I'm just saying. Lori, what's going on? Enjoy these updates. It's better than watching the news. Thank you. This is the news. This is the new news. I asked that question last time. Is that even an appropriate thing? If you're gonna talk about news being new, do you just say with this breaking new news? I guess you don't, right? Because I guess news stations say all the time breaking news. So, anyways, this is the news. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. This is the real estate specific news. We're gonna hit you hard. We're gonna give you facts, meat and potatoes to actually chew on, and then let you decipher where you want to go with it. But if you guys ever want to have a off record conversation, you know where to find me, 480-660-5974, or you can hit us on my social media at Kelly Cook Homes on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. And I have a good feeling there's going to be more news to talk about. Take care.